Well, I think we can draw many very good lessons from the early period of the Industrial Revolution. Of course, earlier in England, but let's take here the United States. The Industrial Revolution took off right around here, eastern Massachusetts, mid-19th century. This was a period when independent farmers were being driven into the industrial system, men and women, incidentally, women from the farms, so-called factory girls, and they bitterly resented it. It was a period of a very free press, the most in the history of the country. There was a wide variety of journals, ethnic, labor, others, and when you read them, they're pretty fascinating. The people driven into the industrial system regarded it as an attack on their personal dignity, on their rights as human beings. They were free human beings who were being forced into what they called wage slavery, which they regarded as not very different from chattel slavery. In fact, this was such a popular view that it was actually a slogan of the Republican Party, that the only difference between working for a wage and being a slave is that working for a wage is supposedly temporary. Pretty soon you'll be free. Other than that, they're not different. And they bitterly resented the fact that the industrial system was even taking away their rich cultural life. And the cultural life was rich. Well, there are by now studies of the British working class and the American working class, and they were part of the high culture of the day. Actually, I remember this as late as the 1930s with my own family, sort of unemployed working class. And they said, this is being taken away from us. We're being forced to be something like slaves. They argued that if you're say a journeyman, a craftsman, and you sell your product, you're selling what you produced. If you're a wage earner, you're selling yourself, which is deeply offensive. They condemned what they called the new spirit of the age: gain wealth, forgetting all but self. Sounds familiar, and it was extremely radical. It was combined with the most radical democratic movement in American history, the early populist movement, radical farmers. It began in Texas, spread into the Midwest, enormous movement of farmers who wanted to free themselves from the domination by the northeastern bankers and capitalists, who ran the markets, sort of forced them to sell their what they produced on credit and squeeze them with credit and so on. They went on to develop their own banks, their own cooperatives. They started to link up with the Knights of Labor, major labor movement, which held that, as they put it, those who work in the mills ought to own them. That should be a free democratic society. These were very powerful movements. By the 1890s, workers were taking over towns and running them in eastern Pennsylvania, in western Pennsylvania. Homestead was a famous case. Well, they were crushed by force.